This is William Wolf to tell you about Maryland Deli and Mini Mart on the northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland. It is sure to become your favorite one-stop shop. Great sandwiches with boar's head meats, fresh salads, fresh coffee in many flavors, China Mist tea, and a large selection of cold beer and fine wine, including kosher wine from Europe, Israel, and the United States. Call for wine case price specials. Need gas? Use your Shell card for a 5% discount. Always clean and inviting, Maryland Deli and Mini Mart has everything you expect from a Mini Mart and much more. But don't take my word for it. Check it out for yourself. The northwest corner of 7th Street in Maryland, or give them a call at 602-277-6269. That's 602-277-6269. That's Maryland Deli and Mini Mart, 7th Street, Maryland, Phoenix. Located near several synagogues, water available for Sabbath walkers. Tell them William Wolf sent you there.
Start this year right with a well-trusted accounting firm here in the Valley, Nelson & Robles PC, certified public accountants in the Valley since 1977. Nelson & Robles PC specialize in monthly accounting and tax preparations for all types of businesses, as well as individuals, trusts, and estates. If you have an accounting or tax need, then call Nelson & Robles PC today at 602-944-4242. That's Nelson & Robles PC, a trusted Valley accounting firm since 1977. 602-944-4242. Call today.
Now on News Talk 960 KKNT, it's the Middle East Radio Forum. Your chance to talk about the turmoil in the Middle East. To call in live, dial anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Now your host for the Middle East Radio Forum, Attorney William J. Wolf.
Good afternoon. My name is William J. Wolf, host of Middle East Radio Forum. This show's every Sunday at noon here in Arizona. Adjust your time if you're listening elsewhere on my website, middleeastradioforum.org. And a Merry Christmas to all. This is a special Christmas Eve edition of Middle East Radio Forum, and I hope all my listeners have a joyous holiday. As you know, this show talks about the Middle East. And if you have anybody that you know who is interested in the subject matter, please tell them that it doesn't matter where they are. If they have an internet connection, they can listen to the show live, and they can also listen to old shows in the archives. The website, again, middleeastradioforum.org. It's 11 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast, 1 o'clock Chicago, 2 o'clock New York, 8 o'clock in the evening in Europe, and 9 o'clock in the Middle East. This is a call-in show. We welcome your calls throughout the show. As you know, I always start my show with what I call my random thoughts, and today I have a special guest on the line, Yusuf Rabin. Are you there, Yusuf?
Yes, I am. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for being with us today.
Wonderful to be here.
You've learned in yeshiva in Israel for 2 years, then you joined the Israel Defense Forces as a volunteer and served in a combat unit for 15 months, and you've just finished your service, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And you're back in the United States now, is that correct?
For the time being.
Okay.
I plan to make Aliyah in about a half year or so.
Okay, excellent. I wanted to have you on the show because there's a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm not sure that everybody is aware of it. And it's about the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Can you please start off by explaining to us what is the significance of the Temple Mount?
The significance of the Temple Mount to the Jewish people is very, very deep. We believe it's the holiest place in the world, not just for the Jewish people, but for mankind as a whole. It's the place of the Akidat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac, as it talks about in Genesis 22, the place where God tested Abraham to put his son Isaac on the altar, which was in Temple Mount. He passed the test, and Isaac didn't die. It's also the place of the dream of Jacob, as it says in Genesis 28. You know, everyone's familiar with the dream of Jacob. He sees the angels going up and down the ladder, and God says to him, "Zeh Shah HaShamayim." This place where Abraham almost sacrificed his son Isaac and passed the test. This is the gate to heaven, and this is going to be the place of the temples. And we know it was the place of the temples. It was the place. It was the Temple of Solomon, many thousand years later, and it was also the Temple of Ezra Nehemiah, which was also known as Herod's Temple. Herod revamped it before it was destroyed by the Romans.
All right, tell us, what is the situation on the Temple Mount today?
It's horrific. A Jew cannot pray on the Temple Mount. A Jew cannot study on the Temple Mount. A Jew cannot even close his eyes. Nothing. A Jew can do no act that can be connected to Judaism. The Muslims have complete, utter control over the Temple Mount today. They have been doing incredible damage to the archaeology of the Temple Mount. They've been uprooting incredible mounds of dirt and just throwing it out with all its archaeological treasures.
And I've been driven crazy about this ever since I found out about it. In the Six-Day War, of course, Israel recaptured the Temple Mount and brought it supposedly under Jewish control. And then what did they do? They turned around and they turned it over to the Arabs.
I'll explain to you. This is something which drives people crazy. People can't understand how the Jewish state can deny Jews the basic right to pray.
Well, why would the Jewish state deny Jews the right to pray and study on their own holiest site?
I'll tell you, the Jewish state, most people don't know this, it was set up to be a secular Zionist state. It was set up originally to be a state without any real connection to its Jewish identity. It was supposed to be the new Jew, the new Zionist, without connection to his past. And you cannot have a secular Zionist state with the temple at its center. It doesn't work that way. What does it mean to bring back the temple? To bring back the temple means to bring back the Davidic monarchy, the line of David, the monarchy, the Jewish monarchy. It means to bring back the Sanhedrin, the Torah-mandated Supreme Court, which is made up of 70 elders. It means basically the end of the secular state of Israel, and that drives them crazy. They fear it. The Israeli state would much rather that the Arabs have complete control and Islamicize the Mount than let the Jews up there to pray and then lead to a situation where we're going to rebuild the temple, bring back the Davidic monarch, and reestablish the Sanhedrin, the religious Supreme Court, which would take the place of the secular Israeli Supreme Court. And that drives them insane.
Okay, tell us, what is currently being done, if anything, to fix this problem? And if you have any suggestions for our listeners, if they'd like to get involved, please tell us also.
Currently today, there are 15 groups dealing with the issue of the Temple Mount. You have the Machon HaMikdash, the Temple Mount Institute, which is run by Rabbi Ariel. They're making all the different vessels which will be used in the Third Holy Temple, and they're teaching people what it is, about the Temple Mount, about the issues, about the temple. You also have 15 other groups which also deal with it. You have the Sivuv Sha'arim, which brings thousands of people to the foot of the Temple Mount every month, and they do a dancing around them, and they say special prayers at each gate for the rebuilding of the temple. And that's what's being done in Israel. And what can you people do?
Right, what can my listeners do?
When you go to Israel, when you take your trips to Israel, and you go up to the Temple Mount, which so many of you do, which is important, okay? And you're always going to see a group of 15, 20 religious Jews standing on the side. And they're going to have to stay there until everyone passes. Tell the police, why aren't you letting them up? Make a scene about it. When you go up to the Temple Mount, do it within Jewish law. Show the Arabs that the Gentiles, too, respect the Jewishness of the site. You could all contact. There's a wonderful website, Temple Mount Institute. I forgot if it's .com or .org, but you can Google it, Temple Institute, and they have all the explanations of the Jewish history of the site. It's a wonderful, wonderful website.
All right, what would happen if a Jew traveling to Israel were to take out his tallis and put on his yarmulke, his kippah, and his prayer book and start praying at the Temple Mount? What would happen?
He would be arrested and be charged with incitement to violence.
And that would be by, obviously, the Israeli police.
The Israeli police.
Okay.
That's the situation we've come to today. It's incredible.
Okay, Yusuf, can you stay on the line? Thank you for being with us, but I'd like you to stay on the line in case any of our listeners have any questions, perhaps maybe to the bottom of the hour?
The bottom of the hour, I wouldn't be able to stay.
Okay. All right, well, stay as long as you can. If you have to leave, certainly we understand. And thank you very much for being on Middle East Radio Forum. Okay, I'd like to introduce my other guest today. My other guest is frequent guest Devin Sper. Good afternoon, Devin.
Good afternoon, Bill. How are you?
I am terrific. Thank you, and thank you for being here. Devin is the author of The Future of Israel, and as I always say, I highly, highly recommend this book. I have read it more than one time. It's very important. And Devin, I understand you won the Glip Award for the best historical book. Because of that?
The best book on religion for 2005.
Okay, best book on religion, excuse me. And I do highly recommend it. And, of course, you're a member of the Center for Advanced Middle Eastern Studies.
Yes, and we have a website too, which is camesinfo.com.
Okay, Devin, I've asked you to be here to talk about the Baker-Hamilton report, also called the Iraq Study Group report. You're very familiar with it, and since it's been in the news and it's obviously a very important report, I thought it was important to discuss it here on Middle East Radio Forum.
Before we do, Bill, and I want to discuss that, could I say something about this Temple Mount subject?
Absolutely.
I think something important that the listeners need to understand is that even if you are a secular Zionist yourself, if you believe in religious freedom, if Israel is truly to be a tolerant state that tolerates all religions, then it also has to tolerate Judaism. And as the guest said, the Temple Mount is the holiest site in Judaism, not the Wailing Wall, but the Temple Mount. The Wailing Wall is simply a substitute for it because we didn't have control of the Temple Mount for many years.
You mean the Western Wall, as it's often called?
You're right, absolutely, the Western Wall. And so if you believe in religious freedom, then there is absolutely no reason and is absolutely unacceptable that Jews are not allowed to pray on their holiest site simply because they're Jews. And we wouldn't accept that in any country, and we certainly shouldn't accept it in Israel.
Okay, Devin, let's get back to this Baker-Hamilton report. First of all, tell us, do you believe that the report is factually correct?
No, I'm afraid it's not. It's based entirely, at least the diplomatic sections, the sections that don't deal with military issues in Iraq, are based entirely on false premises, and the result is very dangerously naive recommendations.
Well, Devin, can you give us some examples about what you're talking? I mean, that sounds pretty extreme.
It sounds extreme, but I'm afraid it's true. And let me give you some examples. Page 52, the report says, quote, Iran's interests would not be served by a failure of U.S. policy in Iraq. Now, I think it's obvious that Iran is doing everything that she can to disrupt U.S. policy in Iraq. Iran is the main supplier of the Mahdi army of Muqtada al-Sadr, which is today the main instigator of violence in Iraq. Iran is one of the main supporters of Hezbollah. Iran is openly defying the UN on the question of nuclear weapons. And so on what basis Baker and Hamilton can say that Iran is not interested in a failure of U.S. policy other than wishful thinking, I can't imagine. I'll give you other examples. The report goes on to say on page 48 that none of Iraq's neighbors view it as in their interest for the situation in Iran to lead to greater regional influence by Iran. Sorry, the situation in Iraq should not lead to greater influence by Iran. And this is a false statement on the face of it. Iran is a neighbor of Iraq. Syria, which is allied to Iran, is a neighbor of Iraq, and clearly these two countries do very much have it in their interest to see an increase in Iranian power. So again, we have a statement which is simply wishful thinking and doesn't bear the test of reason. Another example, it says these countries, referring to Iran and Syria again, share an interest in avoiding the horrific consequences that would flow from a chaotic Iraq, particularly a humanitarian catastrophe and regional destabilization, unquote. First of all, regimes like Syria and Iran, which are the main sponsors of terrorism in the world, are not interested in humanitarianism, and they are not humanitarian in nature. Regimes that send out suicide bombers are not interested in preserving human life. And Iranian President Ahmadinejad in particular has an apocalyptic worldview. And his worldview is predicated not simply on humanitarian catastrophe in the Middle East, but humanitarian catastrophe and destabilization worldwide. He states this openly. So again, on what basis we can possibly conclude, as Baker Hamilton do, that they are not interested in humanitarian catastrophe, despite all the evidence of their actions which speak otherwise, I don't know.
Okay, well, Devin, tell us, what would motivate a committee of experienced diplomats like Jim Baker to make such obviously false statements? I mean, are they that naive, or is it just that they have an agenda? I can't imagine any other alternative.
That's a good question, and I don't think it's that they're naive. These are people who have been around a long time. For example, Jim Baker has been around for for decades and has been to the Middle East many times, so he knows better. The answer is that they are amoral. Not immoral, but amoral. That means they have no sense of morality. Morality doesn't play a role in their thinking. These are basically unemployed diplomats who are seeking employment, and they don't care about the results of their diplomacy on the lives of other people. For example, the Israeli people. Decades of their sort of land for peace diplomacy have resulted in the death of thousands of Israelis, and they continue to preach the same thing. And in my opinion, people like that are actually evil. They're more evil than, say, Israel's enemies who actually may believe in the justice in their cause. These are people who believe in nothing other than their own self-aggrandizement.
Okay, Devin, let me stop you there. We are coming up on the first break of the day. You're listening to Middle East Radio Forum here on News Talk 960 KKNT. My name is William Wolf. Again, the show every Sunday, noon to 1 o'clock. Of course, adjust your time if you're listening elsewhere on my website, middleeastradioforum.org. And as you know, you can also access old shows if you've missed or you want to listen to a show again. You can access those on my website. Again, middleeastradioforum.org. And I always ask you to please utilize the services of my advertisers. And when you do, it's very important. Please tell them that you're there because you heard them on this program. That is how this show is brought to you. Please stay with us. We'll be right back with author Devin Sper.
My friends, we all hope we'll never need the services of an attorney. Sometimes, of course, we don't have a choice. This is Dennis Prager here to tell you about William J. Wolf, attorney at law. William J. Wolf's practice is limited to injury and wrongful death claims, and although he's been in practice for over 31 years, he is not part of some huge impersonal law firm. To the contrary, when you call William J. Wolf, that's who you get. This means you also get very personal service. Over the years, William J. Wolf has successfully taken on many cases that other lawyers have turned down. Now you get the benefit of all that experience. There is absolutely no charge for initial consultation. As I said, we all hope we never need an injury attorney, but if you do, you want one with a lot of experience and one who will handle your case personally. That would be William J. Wolf, offices at 1121 East Missouri. Hours to fit your schedule. His number, 602-279-1914, 602-279-1914, outside the Phoenix metro area, 1-800-WOLF-LAW.
27th Avenue Medical is a loyal sponsor of MIRV. It's a no-appointment medical office where medical and chiropractic services are available into the early evening and Saturday morning. Located at 4527 North 27th Avenue. Or call them at 602-249-4508. See Doctors James Miller, Tricia Croak-Ullman, or Roger Baker. Have a doctor when you need one.
Buying or selling a home? Let Mary Beth Smith make your life easier. She's been a realtor for 18 years and is a certified residential specialist with Realty Executives. Let her show you what her personal service can do for you. Mary Beth has lived in North Phoenix for 30 years but works throughout the Phoenix metro area. Give her a call at 602-434-2900 or visit azqualityhomes.com. That's Mary Beth Smith. Let her expertise work for you. Call her today at 602-434-2900.
Jewish News of Greater Phoenix is your source for timely news about the worldwide and local Jewish community. Our family-owned newspaper has been in business for 58 years. To subscribe, call 602-870-9470 or jewishaz.com. Stay in touch with all the news important to the Jewish community. That's 602-870-9470 or jewishaz.com.
News Talk 960 KKNT. To join in the conversation, call in anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Now back to your host, Attorney William J. Wolf.
Welcome back to today's edition of Middle East Radio Forum. My name is William Wolf. Please spread the word about this show, noon to 1 o'clock in Arizona. Adjust your time if you're listening elsewhere on my website, middleeastradioforum.org. And you can also use the website to send me an email. I like to get comments, good, bad, or ugly. Let me know what you like about the show, what you don't like about the show, or give me any suggestions. If possible, I will bring your suggestions into the show. All right, we have Devin Sper, author of The Future of Israel, as my guest today, and I have David calling from Skokie, Illinois on the line. David, go ahead. You're on the air.
I'd like to ask a question about an issue that hasn't been in the news much lately.
And who is your question directed to, please?
To Devin Sper.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, it hasn't been in the news much lately, and it directly concerns Iran and Syria, and that's the results of the ceasefire in Lebanon. A part of that ceasefire, of course, was to prevent any more arms from flowing from Iran through Syria down to Hezbollah in the south. We haven't been hearing anything about that I've been able to see in the news, either newspaper or anywhere else. And I'm just wondering if there is any success at all as a result of that ceasefire in preventing the movement of arms and ultimately another, which would lead ultimately to another war.
Okay, David, thanks for your call. Let me jump in before Devin responds. I have been reading about it. Perhaps we're using different sources, but apparently the resupply has been unabated. It just keeps coming in. There are even more rockets now that are being trained on Israel for the next go-around. And as a matter of fact, it's my understanding the United Nations and France are actually aiding the terrorists. They are threatening to shoot down Israeli reconnaissance airplanes that are trying to find out exactly what's going on. But go ahead, Devin.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay. Yes, David, that's my understanding of the situation regarding that. Do you have any follow-up questions? Okay, David's gone. Okay, Devin, let's get back to the discussion of the Baker-Hamilton, the Iraq Study Group report. Tell us, does this report at least represent new or offer new thinking and new solutions, or is it just something that is just so beyond the pale that it's worthless?
Well, yes and no, because the report is divided into two major sections. One is what they call the internal problem in Iraq, and two is the external problem. And they try to tie the Iraqi issue into the whole Middle Eastern issue, and their contention is you can't solve the Iraqi issue alone without solving the whole peace, Middle East peace issue.
And what you're talking about specifically, of course, is Israel and the terrorists.
Yes, what they really mean by that is that Israel must make concessions in order to make the terrorists in Iraq happy.
In other words, we sacrifice Israel, and somehow that will make the terrorists nice guys, and there'll be peace in Iraq.
That's precisely their contention, and their language is not much different than what you've just expressed. It's that naive. So on the internal issue, on the military issue, yes, they have some new suggestions on military tactics in Iraq. And I'm not qualified to judge whether they're legitimate or not, although they've basically been rejected by the Army and by President Bush already. But I feel I can comment on their suggestions on diplomacy, and they're offering nothing new at all. The type of thinking that you expressed a moment ago, Bill, is exactly the land for peace scenario that has been played out for 30 years and has brought absolutely nothing new. Let me give you some examples from the report itself. It says on page 55, quote, the only basis on which peace can be achieved, and talking about peace in the Middle East as a whole, is UN Council Resolution 242 and 338 in the principle of land for peace, unquote. Now, Resolution 242, which people hear a lot about, was passed in the UN in 1967. Advocating that Israel give away pieces of her land in exchange for peace. And this is the Israelis have tried to implement this for 40 years, and they have only exacerbated the problem. There is nothing good to show for land for peace. So when Baker and Hamilton come back and say the solution is this same resolution, which has failed for 40 years to bring peace to the Middle East, then that does not represent new thinking. I'll give you another example. They say that there should be a series of meetings between Israel and the Arabs, and they say the purpose of these meetings would be to negotiate peace as was done at the Madrid Conference in 1991. The Madrid Conference is another example of a conference that did not succeed. So the question would be, why emulate it? And the answer is that the only one who would be served by emulating a failed diplomatic process are unemployed diplomats like Baker and Hamilton who are looking for a job. This is diplomacy for the sake of diplomacy with no regard for the lives of the people involved. And one more example before we go on to the next question. On recommendation 16, they say that Israel should give away the Golan Heights. Now, first of all, there's no moral basis for the United States to try to win favor with terrorist-sponsoring states like Syria and Iran by paying in the coin of her Israeli ally. And moreover, there's no practical reason for her to do that. Prime Minister Barak offered Syria the entire Golan Heights, every inch of the Golan Heights.
And, of course, a lot more.
And more, but he offered Syria the whole Golan Heights, and the offer was rejected. And what this should prove to anyone with two eyes open is that the supposition that this conflict is over land is patently false, and that the objection of Syria and Israel's other enemies is not to the location of her borders, but to her existence in principle.
Well, they say that they want to destroy Israel if you listen to them in the Arabic press. And that's one thing that just drives me crazy, because the West doesn't seem to either know, understand, or want to react to what the Arabs are saying in the Arab press, that they are not interested in any type of peace with Israel. Their only objective is to destroy Israel. Okay, let's quickly go to a caller. Joe from Phoenix, go ahead, you're on the air.
Hi, fellas. I agree with everything your guest is saying. He's marvelous and right on the ball. Another example of stupid selections for people on the Iraq Surrender Committee is what some of the talk show hosts have been calling it, the Iraq Surrender Committee. Former Judge Sandra Day O'Connor. I mean, she was a lousy judge. She made some terrible decisions. She still thinks we need race-based preferences. Affirmative action is okay in her mind. She's living 50 years ago, and she doesn't know the first thing about the Middle East. What is she even doing on the committee? And the people from the State Department, they're all very lenient and easygoing people. The State Department is diplomats. They're used to talking and negotiating. That's all they know. They don't know anything about war or that you have to crush your enemy. They're negotiators, basically.
Well, I would agree with you, Joe, that Sandra Day O'Connor doesn't know anything about the Middle East.
She's a joke.
But she was a great trial judge. I actually had the privilege of having a criminal trial in front of her probably 25 years ago, I hate to admit, and she was an excellent judge.
And one other thing, I've been seeing pictures and on TV, Olmert is already hugging with Abu Mazen, or Mahmoud Abbas, whatever, Yasser Arafat's successor. And he's trying to go back to the same old game. They don't learn. He's hugging his enemy again, who wants to cut his throat.
Okay, Joe, did you have a question for Mr. Sper?
Why are they going back to the same old tactics? Why don't they ever learn? When you fail, you do something different. He's hugging his enemies again. Why is he going back to the same old thing again?
Okay, Joe, I very much appreciate your comments and your question. We're going to have to go to after the break before we get a response from Devin Sper, because we are coming up on the second break of the day. You're listening to Middle East Radio Forum here on News Talk 960 KKNT. My name is William Wolf. Again, the show every Sunday, noon to 1 o'clock in Arizona. Of course, adjust your time if you're listening elsewhere on my website, MiddleEastRadioForum.org. And please check out some of the old shows in the archives. That's always a very good way to keep up with this subject matter, which I think is getting more and more important as the world seems to spin out of control in a lot of ways. Also, I again ask you to please utilize the services of my advertisers, and when you do, please tell them that you're doing it because you've heard of them on this show and that you want to support their support of Middle East Radio Forum. This program is also brought to you by Bethel Congregation, 1118 West Glendale in Phoenix, where warm Sabbath experience is available for you every Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. Make Bethel Congregation your spiritual home away from home. And some people have been kind enough to send me some checks. I do accept them. If you want to help me bring the show directly, you can send me a check to my office address, 1121 East Missouri, Suite 117, Phoenix, Arizona, 85014. Again, 1121 East Missouri, Suite 117, Phoenix, 85014. Please stay with us. We'll be right back with author Devin Sper. Siegel's Kosher Market is celebrating their grand reopening, now under new management. Their great specials are not to be missed. Fresh beef, chicken, wines from Israel, and great service are the formula for making the new Siegel's your kosher market and deli. Siegel's on the west side of 7th Street, just south of Camelback, your one-stop shop for all your high holiday needs. Call them at 602-285-1515. Be sure to check out Siegel's expanded restaurant hours and menu. All your favorites, plus Chinese food and sushi.
Scott's Generations is your New York Chicago style deli here in Phoenix. Great corned beef, pastrami, bagels, smoked fish, and everything else you expect, and much more. Eat in, carry out, or great catering. Scott's is the place when you just have to have great deli. Located next to Ace Hardware on the northeast corner of 7th Street and Missouri. Open 6 a.m. every day, and for dinner Friday and Saturday. Drop in or call 602-277-5662.
This is William J. Wolf to thank Carmen Cercone of the Householder Group, specializing in estate and retirement planning, for being a loyal sponsor of Middle East Radio Forum. He is located at 8985 East Bell Road in Scottsdale. Telephone 480-556-9600. Carmen has been my investment advisor for 4 years. I trust him with my financial future. Give him a call for a free financial analysis and see what his personal attention can do for you. He has been in business here in the Phoenix area for more than 20 years. That's Carmen Cercone of the Householder Group, 8985 East Bell Road in Scottsdale. 480-556-9600. That's 480-556-9600. Securities offered through AIG Financial Advisors, Inc., a registered broker-dealer, member NASD and SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through the Householder Group, a registered investment advisor.
If you're looking for a complete quality computer service company that is knowledgeable, reliable, professional, and fast, you need Ultimate Computer Concepts of Phoenix. We offer service and support for all of your computer needs, and we've been serving the Valley for over 10 years, specializing in computer systems and software, internet service, security, networking, and website hosting and development. Call 602-230-4747 or visit us online at uccinc.net.
Kosher pizza in Phoenix? Yes. King Solomon Pizza is kosher and terrific. And it's much more than just pizza. But don't take my word for it. Give them a try and you will be back for more. Located next to Siegel's Kosher Market on the west side of 7th Street, just south of Camelback. That's King Solomon Pizza. Give them a call at 602-870-8655. That's 602-870-8655.
Listening to the Middle East Radio Forum on News Talk 960 KKNT. To join in the conversation, call in anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Now back to your host, Attorney William J. Wolf.
Welcome back to today's Christmas Eve edition of Middle East Radio Forum. My name is William Wolf. The show every Sunday, noon to 1 o'clock in Arizona. As always, you need to adjust your time if you're listening elsewhere on my website, middleeastradioforum.org. Check out the archives and also use it to send me an email. My guest in studio today is author Devin Sper. Again, I want to toot his horn a little bit. He wrote the book, The Future of Israel. I highly recommend it. And Devin, while I'm on that, tell people how they can get a copy.
It can be obtained at any of the local Jewish stores, Scottsdale Kosher Market, the Jewish Quarter, the Jewish Connection, or on the website, thefutureofisrael.net.
And again, I highly recommend it. Okay, Joe just asked a question, and I want to give you a chance to answer. And he's talking about the same old package has been used before, and he's talked about the people on the committee, this Baker committee, that don't have any experience. Go ahead, Devin.
Well, he's right that not only Sandra Day O'Connor has no experience in foreign affairs, but none of the other members, the 10 members on the committee, outside of Jim Baker, have any foreign affairs, real foreign affairs experience, especially with the Middle East. And Baker was a failure, and his policies did not bring peace. So on what basis these people should be empowered to recommend policy, I don't know.
Well, Devin, if these people don't have any experience, Who should be advising the U.S. government about how to make Middle East policy?
Well, this committee was set up by the Congress, and in fact, the way that the United States system works, the president makes foreign policy. And this president was twice democratically elected by the American people. He has not made any secret of what he intends to do. He's very straightforward, and the people elected him on that basis, and his chosen advisors, which is the cabinet, are the ones who need to make policy. And I want to give George Bush credit here, because the Baker-Hamilton committee immediately went out there and said, our recommendations have to be taken as a whole. In other words, you can't pick and choose. And they stressed this point because they didn't want someone taking their possibly valid tactical recommendations on Iraq and the army and rejecting their ridiculous recommendations on Israel. And so they said, no, you have to accept it as a whole. And it's a bipartisan commission of Republicans and Democrats. And the president, if he was looking for a way out of Iraq, could have simply grabbed it and said, okay, the Republican, my own party is telling me I should accept this, and I'm going to. But he didn't. He stood up and immediately pointed to exactly the sections I've just read to you about doing business with Syria and Iran and appeasing terrorism and selling out Israel. And he said, I reject this section and this section and this section. And I give the guy credit for doing that.
Well, that's using the line item veto, isn't it?
That's using a moral compass, is
okay,
what that is.
Fair enough. Devin, tell us, the report says, quote, in diplomacy, a nation can and should engage its adversaries and enemies to try to resolve conflicts. And this is at page 50. Tell us, do you think this is reasonable?
That's one of those slogans you hear from people like Baker that sound reasonable on the face of it, but when you examine it, it doesn't really hold water. The answer to that is it depends on who the adversary is. There are two types of adversaries. There is an adversary, or there is a conflict, which is based on a simple misunderstanding and on which there's real goodwill on both sides. And in those rare cases, you can solve it through diplomacy. But there are many other conflicts and many more conflicts in which the enemy, like Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia or Islamist Iran, has an ideology which is irreconcilable with peace and democracy. And you cannot solve it simply by diplomacy because it's not a simple misunderstanding. Islamist Iran understands us very well, and we understand them very well. There's no misunderstanding here. There is a conflict of ideologies. Historically, appeasement of tyrants like Hitler, Ahmadinejad, Stalin has proven counterproductive.
Okay, Devin, let me ask you this. People say, and I've got a lot of friends I talk to, they say, well, you need to give diplomacy more of a chance with a country like Iran. And regarding Israel, I mean, Iran has stated on many, many occasions they want to destroy Israel, wipe it off the map, and they're trying to develop their atomic weapons in order to do so. I mean, how do you have any dialogue with somebody who wants you dead? Do you just do you dialogue as to whether they stab you, shoot you, or blow you up? I mean, what is the purpose of diplomacy when someone's only objective is your total destruction? And unfortunately, we are coming up on the next break, and I'll give you a minute to think about that after the break. You're listening to Middle East Radio Forum here on News Talk 960 KKNT. My name is William Wolf. Again, the show every Sunday, noon to 1 o'clock. Adjust your time if you're listening on my website, middleeastradioforum.org. And I welcome any comments you have, so you can send me an email through the website and also use it to check out old shows in the archives. And again, I ask you to please utilize the services of my advertisers. And when you do, please tell them that you're there because that they advertise on the show. That helps bring the show to you. And also, if you'd like to directly be my partner here, you can send me a check. It would be welcome. Send it to William J. Wolf, 1121 East Missouri, Suite 117, Phoenix, Arizona, 85014. That's one way you can be a partner with me directly in bringing the show to you. Please stay with us. We'll be right back with Devin Sper, the author of The Future of Israel.
If you're looking for a complete quality computer service company that is knowledgeable, reliable, professional, and fast, you need Ultimate Computer Concepts of Phoenix. We offer service and support for all of your computer needs, and we've been serving the Valley for over 10 years, specializing in computer systems and software, internet service, security, networking, and website hosting and development. Call 602-230-4747 or visit us online at uccinc.net.
Jewish News of Greater Phoenix is your source for timely news about the worldwide and local Jewish community. Our family-owned newspaper has been in business for 58 years. To subscribe, call 602-870-9470 or jewishaz.com. Stay in touch with all the news important to the Jewish community. That's 602-870-9470 or jewishaz.com.
There are a lot of great Mexican restaurants in Phoenix, but I am very particular. When I want the best Mexican lunch or dinner, I head straight to Mi Patio on the southeast corner of 7th Avenue in Osborne. They serve all your favorite dishes and only use pure vegetable oil in their cooking. Mi Patio is sure to become your favorite Mexican restaurant, too. That's Mi Patio Mexican Restaurant on the southeast corner of 7th Avenue in Osborne. Tell them that William Wolf sent you there.
27th Avenue Medical is a loyal sponsor of MIRV. It's a no-appointment medical office where medical and chiropractic services are available into the early evening and Saturday morning. Located at 4527 North 27th Avenue, or call them at 602-249-4508. See Doctors James Miller, Tricia Croak-Ullman, or Roger Baker. Have a doctor when you need one.
To the Middle East Radio Forum on News Talk 960 KKNT. To join in the conversation, call in anytime at 602-508-0960. That's 602-508-0960. Outside of the Valley, call toll-free 888-960-9696. Now back to your host, Attorney William J. Wolf.
Welcome back to the final segment of today's Christmas Eve Middle East Radio Forum. My name is William Wolf. Again, I'm here every Sunday, noon to 1 o'clock, and adjust your time if you're listening elsewhere on my website, middleeastradioforum.org. And we have a caller from San Diego, Fred, calling. Go ahead, you're on the air with Devin Sper.
Thanks a lot. I've got a couple things I heard recently, and one thing I heard and then something else I want to add. But I heard there's a new maybe aircraft carrier that's being moved into the Persian Gulf right now, and maybe that's, I don't know, is it a possibility that that's to take care of some of the problems like Iran, or at least maybe be there to and not hold Israel's hand in them taking care of business if they keep up the nuclear threat? And also, do you think maybe that our surgical bombing techniques, which is kind of late, we never had in World War II when we bombed Berlin, and that seemed to work, do you think maybe that ended up backfiring on us?
Okay, Devin, go ahead. Why don't you start with the first question about the aircraft carrier group that's just entered the Persian Gulf? I think that's the third one that the U.S. has put into the Persian Gulf.
I've read about that, but I have no inside information. We could only speculate as to what the reason for that is. I would hope that it's in order to do something and that it's not in order to saber rattle, because that will be counterproductive.
Okay, and the surgical bombing, of course, Fred is talking about these laser-guided precision or weapons. There's also some of these satellite-guided weapons that are incredibly accurate that can put the bomb exactly where they want it to be put. I
didn't understand that question, though. Fred, were you referring to Israeli bombing in Lebanon, or are you referring to American bombing in Iraq?
Actually, American bombing in Iraq. Maybe we got too technically advanced, where that ended up backing fire on us versus just, versus them being really scared of us.
Well, the surgical bombing certainly is wonderful in terms of preventing collateral damage. In World War II, they found out that it was almost impossible from high altitude to hit a specific target, so they went to actually just bombing the cities in an attempt to bring Nazi Germany to its knees. Now they have a lot more precision with the bombing. They can hit exactly what they want. And I think perhaps that it may be most effective against Iran and all of those atomic development sites that have been buried all over the country. I don't know how else you get to them other than with the precision bombing. Go ahead, Devin.
And
Thanks a lot.
Fred, in Iraq, I think that the surgical bombing is necessary. We are occupying Iraq, and we are not looking to kill masses of people. I think in the case of Israel, the bombing was misplaced because we were being shelled wholesale from a neighboring country, and in that case, you're within your rights to shell them wholesale back.
All right. Thanks very much for listening in for your call, Fred. Okay, Devin, let's get back to the diplomacy that we were talking about. I was talking about how do you negotiate with a country that only wants your destruction. I understand you have some comments on that.
Yes, I believe that you cannot negotiate with a country that wants your destruction, obviously. What you have to do in that case, as with Hitler, as with Stalin, is confront them and defeat them. And I believe that those people who advocate diplomacy advocate it simply because they don't want to confront the enemy. And diplomacy is the thin veneer that hides their moral cowardice. They refuse to take a stand because there are consequences to taking a stand. They will readily criticize, for example, President Bush because there are no consequences to that. But they will not criticize President Ahmadinejad because that would require a war, and they're not willing to fight that war.
And what's amazing to me is that the United Nations is absolutely silent when Iran says they are developing atomic weapons and they're going to use them against Israel. They've got some sanctions, some hand-slapping sanctions, I guess they just put in effect, but it's really kind of meaningless. And also the United Nations is basically silent with Darfur. They were silent with the slaughter in Rwanda. And I'm just wondering, what is the purpose of the United Nations? But that's kind of a rhetorical question. You can respond if you like.
The purpose is what I just said. It is the world body for all those people who don't want to confront evil and would rather talk to it instead of confront it. It's the veneer that allows them to pretend they're doing something about a problem, like Iranian nuclear weapons, when in fact they're doing absolutely nothing about it.
Tell us, this is maybe a little bit going far afield, but we're going to appoint you as the new head of the United Nations after Kofi Annan, who was absolutely worthless. What are you going to do about Iran?
Well, actually, if the United Nations was run by people with will, they could have real embargo on Iran, and that would be very effective. Iran wouldn't survive 1 year with only the dates and oil that she produces. She would need food from the outside. She needs, believe it or not, even oil, refined oil. She can't refine her own oil. She would need every weapon that she has. And if the world really was serious about sanctions, there would be no problem. The problem is that the world is not at all serious about it.
And apparently is going to allow Iran to basically do what it wants to do.
It is absolutely going to allow Iran to do what it wants to do.
And I think Dr. Carroll said they'd put up a monument to all the destroyed Jews in Israel after the atomic bombs go off there.
If they can all get together on that, yes.
Okay. Devin, let's continue with the discussion on the Baker-Hamilton report. Do you agree with the report's contention that, quote, the Arab-Israeli conflict, Iraq, Iran, extremism and terrorism are inextricably linked?
I do, but they're not linked in the way the report is implying. They're linked through the common denominator of the violent, intolerant, and undemocratic nature and traditions of the Muslim Arab world.
Okay. This report, it just seems to go to be blaming Israel again. If you want to blame Israel and try to show that Israel is the cause of all the problems, now you have more ammunition. You have this new Baker-Hamilton report because somehow they brought Israel in as being the key to the whole problem. Basically, if Israel would commit suicide nationally and give up all its territory and give in to the demands of the terrorists, somehow they're going to be nice in Iraq.
You know, even if you hate Israel, and for that reason you would support that conclusion, you have to be realistic enough to understand that if Israel were to disappear, God forbid, it's not going to solve the problem in the Middle East. There have been Muslim attacks on Russia, in Chechnya. There are Muslim attacks in Spain on the train. There are Muslim attacks on the London subway system and on buses. There have been Muslim attacks on Hindus in Kashmir and in Bali. They are now committing genocide in Darfur against the blacks of Darfur. And only a fool could imagine that all these things have anything to do with Israel.
And of course, they're trying to take over Thailand and the Philippines in addition.
And it goes on, yes. And so, even if someone were an enemy of Israel, in his own heart, realistically, he would have to admit to himself that there is no way that having Israel make concessions up to the point where she would disappear is going to change the nature of violent radical Islam. That the problem is their own hatred and their own philosophy. And if you're being realistic, if you're not trying to diplomat this away, if you're trying to confront this problem, then you're going to and you care about the United States, forgetting whether you care about Israel, if you care about the United States, you're going to have to say to yourself, we need a real solution. And a real solution is not some Israeli concession here or there. A real solution will be confronting this enemy wherever we need to confront it.
And as I've said many times on the show, the Arab world only respects strength and power. When you show the equivocation, when you show the weakness, you want to negotiate, you want to give them things, all you're doing is feeding their fundamentalism, you're feeding their terrorism. And this is something that the world just doesn't seem to understand or doesn't want to understand, and certainly is not going to act on this very simple principle. The only way you can win this is through strength.
I disagree somewhat that the world does not want to understand it. I think the United States does understand it. I think President Bush does understand it. As I said, he rejected these passages. The kind of thinking you see in Baker Hamilton is much more prevalent in Europe, where they pretend they don't get it. But the powers that be in the United States, even the Democrats, understand that you cannot withdraw from Iraq. They're happy to criticize President Bush all day long, but even the Democrats in Congress are not advocating withdrawing immediately. They understand that we're in a long-range war, and the only hope in the world that I see out there is the United States and the backbone that the United States has shown.
Okay, Devin, I wanted to get into Jimmy Carter's book. I think we've got a few minutes to do that. I've talked about it previously on the show, and also I would like to mention that David Mayer-Levy, who did come on the show a couple of weeks ago to talk about it briefly, he has the whole show on January 14 to discuss Jimmy Carter's book. Can I have your comments on it?
Yes. The name of the book is Peace, Not Apartheid. And what's particularly galling about that title is that it's not just untrue, it's exactly the opposite of the truth. It stands truth on its head because it's, after all, Carter who is advocating apartheid. Carter is saying that Jews should be expelled from areas like Hebron, in which they've lived for 3,000 years, simply because they're Jews. And what is that other than apartheid? Nobody in Israel in power is suggesting that the Arabs should be expelled from Israel. We have over 1 million Arabs in Israel. They have full civil rights, and yet they're accusing us of apartheid.
And of course, Jordan by law will not allow a Jew to live there. And Saudi Arabia will not even allow a Jew to visit. And as a matter of fact, if you're a Christian and you have an Israeli stamp on your passport, I understand you cannot be admitted into Saudi Arabia
right,
at all.
But that's okay. That's their culture. But Israel is somehow guilty of apartheid. So what's particularly galling, and Carter has to be doing this knowingly, is he's accusing Israel of doing exactly what her enemies are doing.
Okay, Devin, let me interrupt you for a second. We do have another caller, Chris, calling from Phoenix. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Good evening, or good afternoon, gentlemen.
Well, it could be evening if
William.
you're calling from Israel or Europe.
Well, I wish that were the case, but I'm here in beautiful Phoenix today, and honestly, my question was about Jimmy Carter's book, so you guys have certainly answered my question, so perhaps I would just say that Dr. Carroll has a great piece that you can go see on YouTube about diplomacy, the Zucker piece, and I guess I would just want to throw that out there. Maybe you guys could comment on that if you've seen it, which is a clever piece. It's worth seeing. And then I was going to ask, William, are we going to see you live here in the Valley soon?
Are you going to see me live? Well, you could look through the window here of the radio studio.
Yes, of course, yeah.
I have a speaking engagement in Sun City in February. I don't know that that's open to the public, but I do make myself available for speaking engagements, and I have engaged in them on occasion. And I don't know, how long have you been listening to the show, Chris?
I've been listening to the show for, I think, almost in the beginning, but regularly for about the last 18 months.
Okay, terrific. And I'm glad you must be enjoying it. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep listening unless you're a masochist.
I'm enjoying it greatly, and I tell everybody I can about it.
Okay,
certainly.
Chris, thank you very much for listening and for your call.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Devin, I wanted to get back to one thing specific in the Carter book. I mean, there's certain minor things, like he apparently doesn't even know that Arafat was not a Palestinian. He, of course, was an Egyptian. But when he keeps talking about UN Resolution 242 and he lies about it, Israel, according to 242, is specifically not required to return to the pre-Six-Day War borders from those are the borders from the 1949 armistice. It specifically talks about Israel withdrawing from territory in exchange for a peace, a lasting peace, and secure borders, which obviously means that Israel is not going to withdraw from all of the land that was captured in the defensive war. As far as I'm concerned, Israel shouldn't withdraw from any of it. This has been used as a launching pad against Israel in the genocidal attempt of the Arab nations to destroy Israel. You don't give a gun back to a bank robber after you capture him. Why would you give the launching platform like the Golan Heights or Judea and Samaria? The Arabs call that, of course, the West Bank. Why would you give it back to the people who are sworn to your destruction? If you look at Gaza, that's a perfect example. We talked about that withdrawal plan on the show before it occurred, and we said it was going to become a terrorist stronghold. You can check out those shows in the archives to see what I'm saying to you. And, of course, it's come to truth that, in fact, Gaza is a terrorist stronghold where they are continuously rocketing and mortaring the Israeli towns near Gaza. And this is just a terrorist enclave, just as we said.
Well, you're right that Resolution 242 does not call for the withdrawal of Israel from all the territories. But even if we understand that, it has been tried and it has failed. And after 30 years, I think whatever merit there was or interpretation there may have been to Resolution 242, we now need to try something new, since that simply didn't work. And for the Baker-Hamilton Committee and for people like Carter to continue to espouse this failed resolution is simply counterproductive. It's certainly not new thinking as Hamilton is presenting it.
And, Carter blames the victim. The victim, of course, is Israel. It's the victim of all this attempted genocide against it. Israel is mainly, a decent society. No society is perfect, but it's a decent society, a democratic society. And when you have these people that are actively trying to destroy it, and Israel is only trying to survive, when you have Israel being blamed by Carter, I mean, you're creating, the victim into the perpetrator. I mean, that's an obscenity. I've said it on the show before. Carter is a liar, and he's also very anti-Semitic.
And Carter is also a failure from the point of view of Middle East diplomacy. He was voted out of office for good reason. The one thing he thought he achieved was the Camp David Accords, but 30 years on, there's still no peace with the Palestinians. There's still no peace in the Middle East. Situation has gotten much worse because, as you said, Bill, when you try to appease these people, you're throwing gasoline onto the fire. And so 30 years on, the man has no shame, and instead of hanging his head in shame for the thousands of Israelis who have paid in their blood for this ridiculous land for peace idea, he goes on advocating more of the same.
Okay, unfortunately, we are at the end of the show. Devin Sper, author of The Future of Israel. I'd like to thank you again for being on the show. Obviously, I will have you on again. Next week, we have a very interesting guest. My guest will be Noni Darwish, a Muslim Shihad's daughter. She wrote a book called Now They Call Me Infidel, Why I Renounced Jihad for America, Israel, and the War on Terror. This is a woman whose father was killed by the Israelis. He was a terrorist. And she has come around 180 degrees to actually be in favor of Israel, and she is writing in defense of Israel, and she has started a group, Arabs for Israel. So this will be a very, very interesting opportunity for you to ask questions of a woman who has seen it firsthand. She's analyzed it, and she knows from where she speaks. I recommend her book. Again, Now They Call Me Infidel by Noni Darwish, Darwish. She's my guest next week. I'd like to thank you for listening and look forward to your participation in the show again next week.
This was a paid program and was provided for informational purposes only.
KKNT Phoenix, a service of Salem.